No, that's not big enough. No, that's not big enough either. That's more like it.
It's a passport to another world.
Just another American who saw too many movies as a child.
Tell the truth.
You can't handle the truth.
Tell the truth. Time to play.
Hello everybody and welcome to After the Film. I'm your host, Robert Black. Today we're talking about Civil War. Captain America Civil War.
New York. Washington, D.C. Sokovia. Okay, that's enough. Captain, people are afraid.
We'll start this review with the most important thing, love. Wanda Vision, right? I mean, in the comics, they were married for a while. They were totally a couple. And this movie gets right into that. They got great domestic scenes where Vision's making food for Wanda so she feels better. And it's beautiful. You got to go with the romance. And they play it really well because Vision, he's new. Wanda, they refer to her as a kid, even though Elizabeth Olsen's not. But they play them really well as a sort of emotional center or not center, a little emotional off to the side thing. The center is the love triangle between Bucky, Steve, and Tony, but we'll get to that. What you have with the minor characters is there's room for all of them. I mean, you got Wanda and Vision with their problems on two different sides of the conflict so that they have to hurt each other. You got Ant-Man coming in out of nowhere.
It's an honor. I'm shaking your hand too long. Wow, this is awesome.
Captain America, I know you too. You're great.
Jeez.
And his excitement is amazing, because that's what we'd be like. And it's realistic, even though it doesn't quite work as a cinematic structure. Same thing with SpiderMan.
Hey, everyone.
I mean, Spider-Man's introduced, and he's awesome. He's possibly the best part of the movie, because he's hilarious. He has quips like, "Oh, you have a metal arm? That's so cool," as he's attacking Bucky, and that's cool. And then we come down to like Spider-Man comes in out of nowhere. Black Panther is integrated into the plot perfectly. I mean, he's the victim in the beginning, or his father is. Let's just assume there's going to be spoilers.
What? No!
Anyway, so Black Panther's father's killed, and Panther's got to come in because he's got to kill Bucky because, that's what sets this whole thing in motion. And that actually brings me to one of the... I enjoyed Civil War. It's a great movie. Definitely an awesome superhero movie. I think as a film, it's not as good as Captain America Winter Soldier. As a superhero movie, it's probably better than Age of Ultron. And it takes itself a little too seriously here and there, but it's got the good comedy with Spider-Man, with Ant-Man. So it works. That being said, it does have its weaknesses. First one, and maybe this is just me being a little too PC and reacting to complaints about Black Widow in Age of Ultron. The big revelation that she can't have kids is something that she's not a good, that's why she's a monster. I'm not sure that's the context the line was meant, but that's how people took it, and that was bad. And then the problem here is we have this thing where Black Widow is really the only person we see being injured and really responding to it. Well, a little bit of Spider-Man in the post-credit scene, he's still nursing his wounds, but it's not the same thing. Look at this.
At least recognize me.
See, right after we see Sharon Carter joining into the fight and actually doing pretty well against Bucky when she's just Sharon Carter, Black Widow has been trained for this. Puts a few hits down on him, but then gets knocked down, gets strangled, and we see her reacting to that pain. We don't see much of that for the men. Later, Tony has got a sling on his arm, but then he just removes it, a day later? to go fight again, it's not the same thing. Another one we have is they don't really explain the absence of Thor and Hulk. They acknowledge it, but they don't explain it. And I think that's something they could have at least thrown in a line of dialogue just to say, oh, they left. Or why. I mean, Thor leaving isn't that big a deal, but Hulk being gone's a little weird. Another potential weakness, Zemo's plan. And I've seen people complain online that like Zemo's plan was way too complicated. He needed them both Tony and Steve to show up at this base in Siberia at the same time, but he really didn't need them to show up. The fact that they showed up just made it easier to deal with the ending. Like, show the video to Tony, get this stuff across, get them to really fight. He already had them breaking down. I mean, his whole plan is he wants the Empire, the Avengers, to fall apart from the inside, because if you defeat them in a battle, they're just going to come back. The survivors are going to regroup, they're going to fight you again. But if you get them to break down on their own terms, how are they going to work together in the future? The big weakness in this was no one died. Not even Zemo, which is kind of weird. I mean, well, lots of bystanders die, but maybe we should be given a character that actually dies when you're trying to talk about consequences in this movie. When you're trying to make it a big deal that they cause all this death and cause all this destruction. Make it personal. Structurally, there was absolutely no way they were going to have Tony kill Steve, because we're not going to forgive that. The movie audience is less forgiving than the comic book audience. We're not going to deal well with Tony having another movie or being in another Avengers movie after killing Captain America. We couldn't have him kill Bucky because that defeats the whole purpose of the plot, is that Captain America, and this is a Captain America film, is out there trying to protect Bucky. Nor could Bucky or Steve kill Tony, because that makes Bucky unforgivable and it makes Steve unforgivable. And I will admit, I didn't read Civil War when it came out. I was kind of done with Marvel at that point, but I did follow along a little bit. I had to look up what happened.
No fair.
Something made it look like Crossbones. That's the guy that Captain America's fighting at the beginning of this movie. Killed Captain America, but in reality it was Sharon Carter. Brainwashed by Dr. Faustus. I don't know that character. That's a little complicated for this movie. And although structurally it would have worked to have Sharon Carter come back and be the bad guy, but then you got to bring in Dr. Faustus, you got to deal with Zemo being a bigger villain. And the whole thing they wanted was for the big climax of the film to be about the Civil War, about the Avengers fighting each other, not the manipulation of the villain.
The most important thing to us in sort of fulfilling the ideal or promise of Civil War was we didn't want to fall into a structure where the Avengers move into a conflict mode with one another, then sort of repair that and fight another bad guy.
Unlike Batman v Superman, where it's all about them coming together in that third act to fight against Doomsday and catching Lex Luthor for what he's been manipulating them to do. This one is about setting up that fight.
Captain, people are afraid.
The Avengers have operated with unlimited power and no supervision. That's an arrangement the governments of the world can no longer tolerate.
Some people complain, no, I don't understand why they're fighting. Why does Tony Stark suddenly have a conscience? He's had a conscience. He nearly died at the end of the first Avengers film. He was suffering from PTSD in Iron Man 3. I mean, Robert Downey Jr. plays it well, but the script doesn't really comment on it, is maybe the problem. And so people are understanding the reason Tony is responsible is because he was literally responsible in Age of Ultron. And so it's a big deal. Sokovia was his fault. Meanwhile, on the other side, you got Steve, who, after Winter Soldier, he doesn't trust the government. He doesn't trust S.H.I.E.L.D., but he trusts himself. It's not, I want to save my ex-boyfriend, although that's totally it. It's that he doesn't want government agencies with agendas.
And agendas change.
Ultimately, what the movie comes down to, though this won't be the last thing in this review, is whether or not we need an authority figure over us if we trust ourselves to be good. I mean, that's the point at the end. Should we trust Black Panther just because we've seen him in a fight? Just because he decided to go with Captain America in the end and help out Bucky? Maybe. But he's still also, I mean, he's a king. He's royalty, he's a world leader, he's a politician. just like the people who wanted to be in charge with the Sokovia Accords. Whether or not that's good, whether or not that's bad, the Sokovia Accords were still going to be passed. We'll see how that goes in the future movies. One more quick comparison between this movie and Batman v Superman. Tony Stark finds Spider-Man. We don't even see the investigation. He just knows. Saw some YouTube videos, narrowed the guy down to Queens, went and found his apartment. He just shows up. And we accept that because Tony's a genius. And it's fine. But then in Batman v Superman, you got Bruce has spent, what, a couple years? I think it's 18 months. Dealing with this aftermath of the big attack on Metropolis, and he never figured out who Superman was. He never bothered to think, you know, I have a secret identity, maybe Superman does. And that's a problem. It's a problem with Batman v Superman. In this movie, it works. We accept, yeah, hey, Tony knows this guy, knows this kid. We all know that they had to throw Spider-Man back in, like in the middle of production, because they got the rights to him. And he was supposed to be more important originally. Black Panther wasn't supposed to be as important. But we accept when Tony just shows up and he's got this guy. Just like we accept when Ant-Man shows up. Whether or not we saw the Ant-Man movie, whether or not we liked the Ant-Man movie. And I did like the Ant-Man movie. But whether or not we liked that movie, we accepted, hey, there's this other hero. And it's that Marvel Universe is expanding even beyond its own movies. And that's good. And we'll end this review where we started it, with the love. This movie is all about the love triangle between Bucky, Steve, and Tony. You know, Steve loves Bucky. Steve wants to love Tony, but he just can't do it. And Tony, well, Tony's kind of like the abusive boyfriend who wants Steve to do whatever he wants him to do. And Steve just keeps going back to his ex. And that's a problem. In the end, Steve leaves that nice little phone for Tony, and I guess they're on good terms. So good for them. Thank you for watching. I'll be back with another movie as soon as I can. In the meantime, see more movies. You don't see enough of them. Neither do I.
Cut. That's a wrap.
How's that for a slice of fried gold? In case I don't see ya. Good afternoon, good evening, and good night.